my biggest key takeaway is we want to make sure that your child's prepared to do the work when they get here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to accept kids that we know for sure are not going to be successful here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my biggest key takeaway.
Right.
Hi, I'm Miss Mare.
And I'm Miss Andrea.
And welcome to Tea Time.
Yes. Today we're going to talk about something really important to homeschooling parents.
I think we're talking about something that should be important to homeschoolers, but sometimes maybe isn't. How do you decide what your child needs to learn? And how do you know that they've learned it? So what are the standards? What are our metrics?
So, 20 years ago, if I asked that question, a veteran homeschooler would look at me and go, that's not why we're here. That's not what we're doing. We're just making happy, shiny, relaxed children, and we'll worry about the academics later. If the academics are right for the child, then they're right for the child. But
at the end of the day, this is home education,
Right.
homeschooling. You are supposed to be teaching your child something.
The law literally says that your child's education should be commensurate with what they would be getting in a public education.
What's happening in a classroom? That means that if students in 5th grade should be capable of reading this many number of words, your child should be capable of reading this many number of words.
Pretty much.
It means that if a child that is a freshman in high school should have this grasp of these math concepts, your child should have this grasp of these math concepts.
Right. My personal belief is figure out what the bare minimum is that your child needs to know, and then look at your child's gifts.
Right.
And then go crazy.
Right.
There. The homeschoolers were like, it doesn't matter. And I was like, but I need my list. I need my academics. But as I started to reverse engineer and read, because I'll read and read and read, and figure this out, I realized that they were kind of right in some ways.
Right.
Because the reason they were right is because colleges don't care. Colleges don't care if you've met your state standards. And I like my list. I like being a nerd. I expected my children to have these qualities since they are from me and they're very nerdy father.
Well, your children had aspirations to go to college and expectations to go to college, right?
I mean, we had expectations for them to go to college. They weren't old enough to make those decisions yet. Mm-hmm.
You have state board of education standards that are out there, and they mean, even within the state university systems, those standards kind of don't mean anything. When you're looking at specifically the university system of Georgia, you have the flagship institutions. That's the University of Georgia, that's Georgia Tech. And I'm talking state-run colleges. There are a lot of private colleges in the state. We're not talking private colleges. That's its own beast. In the state-run system, you have your flagship colleges, flagship universities. They're all research institutions. They all confer doctorate degrees. They're all universities. Then you have your regional educational institutions. This is a mix of colleges and universities. Some of them you can get a doctorate at, some of them you don't. So the difference between a college and a university, colleges you just get bachelor's degrees. Universities you can get a master's or a doctorate.
Right. So basically, what you need to figure out is what kind of college is your child going to go to.
Right.
Bare minimum or maximum.
No, I would definitely shoot for the maximum.
Right.
What's the highest that you think your child might eventually decide that they might want to be qualified for?
Right. And so part of that is looking at who your child is, and as they hit middle school age, figure out what they're going to do with their life. Once you figure out who this child is and what they want to do with your life, then you need to look at the most stringent college that's going to get them there. You know, what is it, shoot for the stars and land on the moon?
Right.
Kind of philosophy. So your child wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. You might want to gear them toward Ivy Leagues. Here's what Harvard has to say about homeschoolers. Each applicant to Harvard College is considered with great care, and homeschooled applicants are treated the same as all other applicants. There is no special process. but all relevant information about your educational and personal background is welcome. In addition to the application, all applicants are required to submit a transcript, which can be created by the family member or agency overseeing your schooling. Oh, and recommendations. If the application fee presents a hardship for your family, simply request a waiver. And they recommend you read an article entitled Homeschooled en route to Harvard. It was written in 2018. And it shows you, it gives you a story of like 4 homeschoolers and how they got into Harvard. And the net of the article is they focused on the child's area of giftedness, and they went overboard there. So I say that over and over for a reason. Okay. Say your kid wants to go to a state college. They're not sure what they want to be. Maybe they want to figure their lives out and they want to use college to do that.
Right.
So maybe they just want a general education college degree. In our state, the high bar for that would be UGA.
Right.
So you're going to educate yourself as if you're going to UGA, right? So here's what UGA says about homeschoolers. They're a little stringent, of course. So if a student is home educated or attends a non-accredited high school, he or she must demonstrate their academic ability through standardized test scores, yes, and or accredited coursework. The student must also be able to validate completion of all CPC subject areas through submissions of the following: official scores from the SAT or ACT. I don't care if schools are waiving it. If you're homeschooled, just keep your eye on that ball. For math and English, that's going to verify that your kids are where they should be in math and English. IB, if they've had some IB coursework or some advanced placement with AP exams.
Testing in both of those can be a little squirrely, though.
Mm-hmm. Coursework for credit that appears on an official college or an accredited high school transcript. So what they're saying is you need to show that your child has been educated in a way that can be tested, and or they've taken some accredited classes outside of what we as parents can do by ourselves.
So ideally here, this is where you lean into dual enrollment.
So yes, dual enrollment. It gets a little complicated because back when my kids were young, the answer to APs, because APs weren't readily available to homeschoolers, were CLEP exams. All the other state colleges will take them.
Right.
UG, and except maybe Georgia Tech. But they don't want them. So I did some sleuthing. I did my sleuthing. Homeschoolers can now access AP classes.
Cool.
The same way they can access the PSAT.
Got it.
You have to call the schools and beg.
What a headache.
And you have to call them early in the year because there should be someone at the school technically overseeing your child's journey to the AP test. And literally I put in our city, and it gave me every high school in this city.
Yeah.
Allows you to go in there and take an AP test, but you have to call them in fall and not wait to spring.
On paper, they do. Sometimes you got to fight with them.
No, yeah.
Just
call them all. And here's the thing. Phoenix takes it. Phoenix is going to let you take the AP there.
Phoenix is probably the
because Phoenix is a school.
Local alternative high school.
Right. So the local alternative high schools are going to be like, no one else here is taking it. Come on in and take it. So, use your little brain. It's there for a reason. And this is new information to me because the rules
I was going to say, the rules are kind of always shifting a little bit because here's the thing. A lot of these rules get made at the state level. And so this is how we're going to interact between state-run education and people who are doing something else.
And so if all this is scary to you, though,
dual enrollment.
Yeah. You can call all the high schools in your area generally and find a high school, find someone who you feel you can work with.
Right.
That's going to let your child into that AP class. However.
AP test.
Yes. they may try to get them to go into an AP class.
They may try to get them to take class.
However, there are two other options for you. One is online classes with the public school. You can do that now. You can say, okay, for these two classes, because you don't have to have the whole suite of APs. I highly recommend that a child take an AP in the area of giftedness. Right. You know, or maybe when my students go to dual enroll, I say I want you to dual enroll 1 math, 1 language arts, 1 history, 1 science. So I'm not saying like
get a taste,
like kill the kids with it. I'm saying just show that you can work at that level for the colleges that you're trying to get into. So there's that. There's doing it through the public school, AP through the public school, or there's dual enrolling through your local college, and they tend to be way more friendly.
Because they're going to understand what the expectations are from a college course, what that workload looks like, how quickly that class moves. There are so many soft skills you get out of doing a dual enrollment thing, as well as then you're demonstrating to the colleges you're applying to as a full-time student. Yeah, I can hang here. These are the classes I took, and I got good grades in them. So, you know, taking a chance on me by giving me a spot in your school, you're not going to regret that. And that, at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. That's why they're asking for the SAT scores. That's why they're asking for some kind of accreditation. They're looking for a benchmark that says, this kid looks good on paper, but can they do the work?
Keep in mind, this is for our hardest to get into state school.
That's the flagship.
Okay.
Which is closer to an Ivy League than not.
Right. So, say your child is in the theater arts. Say you have a performing arts kid. What would they need to get into Juilliard? Like, let's just go to the wall. Right. So, here's what Juilliard says about homeschoolers. Right? The Juilliard school requires no specific courses, GPAs, standardized test scores, or class rankings for the entry to this program. Nothing. And I got an unschooling to a lot of theater conservatories. Right. They're not lying. However, they will carefully evaluate your academic record and required essay. Make sure they have the scholastic competence necessary to succeed in graduate level coursework. In other words, your child needs to be able to read and write at a grade appropriate level. What they need more than anything else is that they excel in their craft.
Life experience.
If you're a theater artist, you better be able to theater art real good. So exceptional talent as a performer. And the potential to meet Juilliard's technical standards, which means you need to be able to read music and all of that neat stuff. A high level and quality of training in musicianship. A capacity for sustained disciplined practice. The personal maturity and generosity of spirit essential for ensemble work. Broad and thoughtful interest in the world of music, including its historical traditions and contemporary trends. A clear dedication to artistic excellence and a desire to exercise artistic leadership. If the goal is, for example, musical theater, they need to be a triple threat. And this is just what I know. Right. Which means they need to meet this criteria not only in music, but in dancing and in acting. Yep. So, you know if your child's a theater artist.
Okay, but here's the thing, because those are the requirements that are on paper. But in reality, a school like that really prefers...
So they said maturity.
That
they weren't playing.
Go and you get some life experience in the industry and then come back and apply.
I got a student in just about every school except Juilliard because he was young. Yeah. Now that we know what the colleges think, and basically what are the colleges saying? Like, how did you interpret all of that to what the three different levels of colleges are saying?
That my biggest key takeaway is we want to make sure that your child's prepared to do the work when they get here. We don't want to accept kids that we know for sure are not going to be successful here. I think that's my biggest key takeaway. Right. Another thing that I know to be true, but I'm not necessarily sure was in what they were writing there, But what I know to be true is that students need to stand out. They need to project themselves very well, but they need to know who they are. And what doesn't stand out is a massive list of accolades across every discipline, generally.
Because every spring, when the college acceptances are done, there's always a kid who wants to sue the school. Because they see that a kid who they don't think is as well rounded as they are getting an
I had a higher SAT
acceptance
score
that they did not get. Yeah. Not just SAT score, but I did all this service.
Yep.
You know, I was leader of this club and leader of that club and leader of this club and leader of that club. But meanwhile, Timmy over there has good scores, just good in everything. He kind of laid low socially, but the things he did in science, the things he did in his area of giftedness blew the teacher's face off.
Right. And
that person wrote their reference letter. Because newsflash, colleges don't want a well-rounded student. And I learned this by dealing with conservatories, theater conservatories.
Right.
They want a well-rounded class. The college wants the kids that they let into every class. In 10 years, you'll be able to look back at that class and say, that class was awesome.
Right.
So they don't want a kid who did all the things. They want kids who do each thing in excellence so they can put them together.
For example, where you have kids coming in and there is this kid that's super gifted in the arts, and this kid that's super gifted in writing and in language, and this kid that's super gifted in, you know, they've already got some business stuff happening on their resume. This kid that's super gifted in this aspect of science, this kid that's super gifted in this aspect of math, you know, the kid who has this passion for anthropology and, you know,
where did you get that?
A senior study thing, assisting a dig in some other country.
Right.
You know, that kid's going to be more likely to be accepted than even somebody who has a higher
president of everything.
GPA, a higher SAT, but they don't stand out in any one particular area.
They're not showing any personality. They're not showing the flavor. They're not showing the spice.
Right.
They're just showing that they follow rules real good.
Right.
Colleges don't care. So, if we go back to the checklist, what does your homeschooled high school student need to graduate and get into college? Georgia has a formula. All states do. The state of Georgia requires students to accumulate a minimum of 23 units in order to be awarded a high school diploma.
Right.
Homeschool students are not required to comply with this requirement. This is from Georgia Homeschool Education Association.org. But they very often accumulate more than 23 credits.
I was going to say, if your child's engaging in their education, they're going to have so many more.
So my daughter had like the core 18.
Right.
And then she had 18 more in the arts. What did we do to your child?
Oh, I think we had 40-something credits on my child's transcript.
But these were things that he wanted to do.
These were things that he wanted to do.
We had to fight him to do the things to meet that checklist.
Right? We had to pull teeth to get Algebra 2 out of him.
But the I don't know,
the theater
25 credits and everything else came easy.
They did.
You know?
They did. 4 years of history, that was more me than him, but he wasn't mad about it.
Oh, he was good at history, so.
Because he enjoys history.
So, it is advisable to have your child complete 23 credit hours before awarding a diploma. There are some exceptions. If your child is IEP level, with or without the IEP, you can remove some of those things there. Maybe enrich them with some arts, though.
It's a good benchmark. So. Understand that when you're looking at the colleges at the end of the day, the admissions office is trying their best to take what you give them about your child's education and relate it to something that they know. And so they have a list in Georgia that are, in English. These are the classes that we will accept as classes. Mm-hmm. And so between the work that you might do in putting together the portfolio, the work that your admissions counselor might do, y'all need to work together to find the closest corollaries on that list.
It's really interesting.
Between what your child did. It's
really interesting because there's this list.
The Board of Regents. So this is for the colleges. This is University System of Georgia.
It says this, whatever digit number, this class, and this is what that basic syllabus is. But that's what they require of public school students. That is not what they require of child students.
There are schools that will ask for that because they've got so many applicants and they are trying their best to give everybody a fair look. And so they want to find as many corollaries as they can so that they kind of fit in that flow. I mean, it was all documentation we already had.
I mean, these are things I do organically, so I don't think about them. Like, I know what's needed. I know what they're looking for, but they're not, if you just have a basic outline, they're like, yeah. Like, they're like, and here's the thing, dual enrollment is a way higher bar for homeschoolers.
Which is weird.
Like, so dual enrollment is going to be harder than getting into a college.
Right. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest takeaway that you can have from this video is everything depends on the school.
Right.
There are going to be a lot of schools where you're like, here's the transcript. They're like, cool. And that's it. And there will never be anything else that they ask to look at. They will just take that at face value and, great. And then there will be schools like this one where we had to reorganize everything in the Google Doc to meet this list requirement from the Board of Regents.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, community college, 4 language arts, 3 maths, algebra, geometry, and 1 other.
Something else.
Personal finance, usually fine. 3 science, 2 should be labs, 2 social studies, 2 foreign languages, optional, depends on the school. Doesn't hurt. 1 health, 1 phys ed, electives, arts, and tech. If you have not met these requirements for community college, you can just go on and take the GED.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's your fallback.
And still get into the community college. So that's why foreign languages. But if you haven't taken these things, you're going to struggle. So take them. Because it's not just what the schools want.
Right.
It's a body of information you need to have in you to survive at that level.
Yeah.
Period.
I don't disagree.
Okay. So mid-level state college. 4 language arts. 3 math, an algebra, a geometry, and something harder.
Could be algebra 2.
Yeah. 3 sciences, 2 should be labs. 3 social studies, government, and econ in the state of Georgia. So, I mean, to be more exact, for a Georgia State College, you need world history, U.S. history, and econ government. And econ and government. And it can be 1 class or it can be 2 half credits. 2 foreign languages, the same foreign language. 1 health, 1 phys ed, electives. A high-level state college. AP or dual enrollment is highly recommended. Highly recommended. 4 language arts, 4 maths, algebra, geometry, and 2 more difficult. Probably need to do some
pre-calc.
Pre-calc, yes. Or even calc.
Right.
You may want to start your high school math in the 8th grade to get in there. 3 sciences, 2 should be lab. 3 social studies, government and con, U.S. history.
So also, you just said something, though, that is important to kind of point out that I don't know that everybody knows.
What did I say?
High school transcripts can very much include classes taken in 8th grade. They do in public schools. They can at home schools as well.
Ivy level, college. You have to do AP and dual enrollment to get into an Ivy. So find the classes online with your local school. Kind of take advantage of the TiVo bill where your child takes an elective at the school and then have to take one other course. It doesn't have to be the full course, but you have to show that your child can operate at that level. Right? And I prefer that children do it in areas where they're gifted and interested because they're going to be motivated to do well. So 4 language arts, 4 math, algebra, geometry, and 2 more difficult. 4 sciences, 2 should still be labs. 4 social studies, government and econ recommended. 2 foreign languages, 1 health, 1 phys ed, electives. Electives should not necessarily all be arts and tech. Electives might be that 5th or 6th science.
Or the 8th history class.
Or the 8th history class. Because like my daughter had at least 6 or 7 language arts, which makes sense since she almost got a perfect language arts, verbal SAT.
Yeah. My child has a Shakespeare class credit on his transcript because he performed Shakespeare. He had to analyze it. He had to perform it.
He dramaturged it.
He was our dramaturg for Hamlet.
Right. So at this level, your electives shouldn't all be flowery things. Definitely do flowery things if that is in your talent level. But those electives should probably be more of what your child is gifted in.
And that's when we're looking at this and it says 23 credits and
that's
high achieving homeschool parents, we're like, that's
crazy.
Adorable.
Kids did so many more credits.
No.
I have a child going into 9th grade who's probably already got 10 credits right now.
Oh, yeah.
It is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
And we look at some of our kids and we're like, they're graduated, and then no, it's 2 more years for that. We're
my parents are always like, can you leave my child alone? They're not going to college next year. And I'm like, they can.
They could. They've done everything that they need to and then some.
I understand that we need to hold them and hold them and cradle them gently for another year or 2, but academically we are there.
Right.
With all that said, your homeschool program does not need to conform to state high school standards.
Right.
It's probably exceed it, but it doesn't need to conform.
It's probably going to exceed it.
Right. So how do you know you have met requirements to assign credit to a class? My favorite thing. According to Georgia Home Education Association, a Carnegie unit, a credit, is the most often used system of measurement. And 120 hours to 150 hours of work equates to that 1 credit. If your student has 180 days of school, 120 hours of work is about 3.3 hours a week.
So
do I ask for more than that?
Envision a child that's...
I'm sorry, I just got mad.
Right. No. Envision a child that's following their passion and doing something that they enjoy. They're spending that much time and more. That's where your electives are coming from. That's where some of your core classes are coming from.
These students will, in reality, log more than 120 hours per course, especially in the maths. That's why I said 150.
Right.
Each homeschool family is free to determine what is required in order to award 1 credit hour for their children. But that's the standard. And if you want to go to some schools, for instance, when I do a portfolio for a lot of kids for the maths and sciences, in the corner of that math and science page, I put how many hours they spend. Because schools like SCAD want to know.
Interesting.
SCAD wants to know how much math they did.
Interesting.
Go figure. But
that's weird.
It's good to have that tally. But the easiest way to look at credit hours is textbook. Complete 75 to 80% of the textbook. That's exactly what high schools do. Okay? 2, hours of study, which we just mentioned. 60 to 75 hours is a half credit. 120 to 150 hours is a whole credit. 3, testing. AP, CLEP.
So when we were talking earlier about the flagship institutions not accepting a CLEP test, that means that they're not going to confer college credit for that. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily take some, because you can use those as
high school,
the metric for your high school requirements.
Right.
So if your child needs an extra credit, and there's something like, here we are,
analyzing,
we're
interpreting literature
at the wall, somehow we missed a year of language arts, but the child's good at language arts.
If your child can read classical works and Shakespeare, just get them the analyzing and interpreting literature practice book.
And now you have a credit in language arts.
You can get that in 2 months.
Without having gone through an entire cycle of a year. So if you wind up with your child who's now a senior and is like, maybe college is something that we should look at, and you're now scrambling to meet some of these requirements, that's a great way to kind of pop some in.
And we're going to have to do a video on how you can do your entire high school and some of your college, if not most of your college, through testing.
Right.
Because if you've homeschooled this far, you might want to just keep going.
And you mentioned textbooks, but there are a lot of online programs out there. So just completing one of those.
Like Khan Academy.
Like Khan Academy. My child just knocked out pre-algebra. Yay. And so there's this is the other child.
Yeah,
the young one. Who will not be on this channel because he doesn't like this kind of thing. But when you look at a course in Khan Academy, there's a percentage at the top. And, it's measuring mastery. And so screenshot that, 94% mastery. Now you have a credit, and that's your grade for the class.
A textbook can also be an online program.
Exactly.
Right. So, other things you should know. You can start counting high school credit hours in grade 8 for classes at the high school level.
Right. It's about the rigor.
Right. We have a middle school at our program, and we have a high school at our program. And 8th grade is split across middle and high school. Some kids need a little bit more work, and some kids are ready to go.
Yep. If they're working at a higher level, we put them in the high school class.
Right. Right. You can access public school courses online to supplement your homeschooling. All the states have that now, K-12 programs. Now, we've talked about that before, and we have some problems with it. Because you really can't put a child in more than 2 of those K-12 type classes at a time because of the amount of seat time required. Your child won't have time to do anything else with their life. Okay? And then you can take some classes at your local public school while still being classified as a homeschooler.
And that may vary state to state. You can do that in Georgia.
Yeah, not all the states have freed it up yet. If you look up Tebow law, and it's called something different in each state, but they'll still reference it, so it was started by Tim Tebow, the football player.
Right.
And so, do you have any strong takeaways from all that?
Honestly, my biggest takeaway is that we need another video so we can talk about how you take radical homeschool experiences and document them to look like this.
Absolutely.
Because these are the requirements that colleges are going to want to see on paper. But as wildly different as homeschool experiences can be, especially the really good homeschool experiences that are out there and they're weird and they don't conform to any kind of like a state written standard, you have to figure out how to communicate that back to the colleges so that they understand what your child has done.
And I've done that in spades.
Oh,
it's not hard.
That's her gift.
It's not hard.
That is her gift. Taking an Eagle Scout program and pulling the things that were learned from doing that and slotting it into these educational pockets.
We also need a video on homeschool-friendly colleges.
Yeah.
Because
that does make a huge difference.
For a more unique experience, the homeschool-friendly colleges are going to be the way to go. They are not generally state colleges. With the exception of Piedmont.
There are some state colleges here.
But generally they're private colleges, but they tend to have merit scholarships. So that's extremely helpful.
And that is the other thing. We talked a lot today about state schools because generally speaking, state schools are usually less expensive. It's not as true anymore.
In our state, yeah.
It's not as true anymore, but generally speaking, state schools are going to be a little less expensive than private colleges. in many states, you have opportunities to have access to state funds to go to school. Even if it's just a discounted in-state tuition, the state's paying part of that education. And so you can absolutely leverage that for a more affordable college experience. Because we haven't even touched on the concept of scholarships, but here's the other thing. When you lean into a child's giftedness, when you nurture that over the course of their education, which is in theory what we're doing here as homeschoolers, then you have the opportunity to leverage scholarship money that is not necessarily available to people who've not done that.
Right.
There are so many scholarships out there that get super specific about some of the weirdest things.
Oddly specific
scholarship money. Yeah. So, yeah, more than anything, I'm seeing all of the other videos that we can do in line with this.
So here's what I feel like I need to impart. All these lists are lovely. Learn them and then file them appropriately. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure your child has met the minimum requirement for the level they're trying to reach. But don't get so stuck in that they don't step outside of that.
Yes.
And get that unique experience. And don't get so into it that you do all of that and then try to give them their unique experience.
Yeah, no.
Because they're going to crash and burn.
Right. Don't try to kill your children. Don't do that.
Two very guilty people sitting right here.
Right.
Be aware of the minimum that your child has to reach. And then be aware of what your child specifically can do over and above that is unique to them. That is what is going to meet the requirements of the college.
And I think that, and this is, I guess, just the way my brain works, is I would say, have your list of minimum requirements. And then at the end of each school year, or maybe at the mid-semester break halfway through the school year, just kind of glance at it and be like, what did we do that can fit here? And make sure that you're keeping some at least halfway decent records of what your child is doing, because that will make everything easier at some point down the line in the future. You don't want to get to senior year and be like, oh, we need to recreate my child's high school experience out of whole cloth because I didn't record anything.
And you don't. You just have to be an annoying parent and take pictures and keep programs. But we'll talk about portfolios. We will.
We do need to revisit portfolios. I think we do have a video on portfolios.
It's probably not deep enough.
It's probably not
I
deep
need to
enough.
show them that too.
Indeed. So, here we are. If you like this and want more information like it, let us know. We are pretty responsive to feedback.
Always responsive to feedback. If you ask for something specific, it'll probably get done first.
Right.
So,
until next time.